Hi, everybody. I think it's great that we're all here today. Just going to echo the comments that Eric and Christine have said. I just think that the more we do to get our kids focused and prepared for college, the better we are. And I'm going to talk at the end really about a moral imperative that we have to our children to get them prepared for college and kind of what that brings along with it. So this is, we call it the new junior year curriculum, but really it's become a kind of an all-school thing, and we've really started in the ninth grade. I'm the high school assistant principal at Crestwood High School. Ron Reed is my principal currently. He just accepted the job and is moving on to another district, and he was unable to be here. He also serves on the ACT Midwest Council, and their executive board meeting is this week as well. So starting off with some results. In 12 weeks of instruction, we saw these gains for our students. 1.32 point gain for all kids in math, and that's from the lowest of the low kid to the highest of the high kid. The average was 1.32 points. A 3-point gain for kids who had a 3.0 or above in math. We had 69 students at 22 or higher. And then we had 40 more within 3 points of that 22. And the reason I use 22 is because that is ACT's benchmark of college readiness. Just as a kind of where we were before. Last year we really only had, we had 43. So we've really, increased the number of students who are at college ready. This year we only had 6 students below a 14 in math. And anybody who does the data analysis, when you see that 12 or that 9 on that ACT sheet, you're just really cringing. So when I was looking through, I didn't see any 12s or 9s. There were a couple of 14s, a 13. Before that, we had 13 previously. Then in English, we had a bit of a kind of an awakening for our English department when we said, hey, listen, it's the same skills in English as it is in math. You can really target those in those 2 areas. Those are 2 areas where comma usage, slope-intercept, multivariable formulas. Those things really can be targeted, and you can really get in and say, this is what you personally are missing. So we really did this in English in about 6 weeks. We started off, we gave them some data to start, but we really weren't aggressive about it. We got aggressive about the last 6 weeks leading up to the test. And we moved our kids, about 60% of our kids are college ready in English after this, so that's good. It started last year. This was really our big epiphany when Christine was talking about the one student that she had who took all of the classes and did everything that they could possibly do and got an 18. We had a similar student. His name was Ben. He has all those attributes that her student had. He also throws an 84-mile-an-hour fastball and was being recruited by colleges all over the country. Ben had a 4.0. Ben went into the fall ACT. Got like a 16. So we were looking at it, we're like, what in the world can we do? So over Thanksgiving break, we're on trimesters, and literally over Thanksgiving break, I was working with 2 math teachers to get students like Ben, this assistance, where they were doing really well, they were exceptional students, but for some reason they were not performing on the ACT. So we created a class that we call College Prep Algebra and Geometry, and it is an attack the gap class specifically designed to look at what students need and give them what they need and fill in those gaps. So we looked at that and we said, hey, we're going to do this for these 20 kids. We're going to pull them out of their other classes. We're going to make it 5th hour. We happen to have a spot, a little bit of flexibility. I combined a couple of classes where our AP Calc teacher was going to be able to teach it. So we had the buy-in from the community. Oh, our kids are getting the best teacher in the school. Then we also had this low-track Algebra 2 course. In Michigan, every student is expected to take Algebra 2 by the time they graduate. I don't know if it's similar in Indiana or Ohio or any of the other areas, Illinois. So educators in Michigan got this great idea to say, well, we don't know how we're going to get everybody to pass it, so we're going to give the lowest math kids 4 classes in Algebra 2 instead of just 2 classes in Algebra 2, and we're going to slow it down and we're really going to work with them. Well, we found out that 59% of our kids were getting a D or an E in that low-track Algebra 2 class. I mean, 59% of those kids could also be getting a D or an E in AP Calc, but at least they were walking out of the AP Calc room. So we took that and we said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to give those low-track kids what was perceived as low-track kids, because there was no academic testing putting these kids in. It was self-selection and kind of what people thought they should be in. We're going to give them this college prep algebra and geometry class as well, and we're going to put them in that. So we saw this. We saw a 2.8 jump for all kids who were targeted, about 120 kids the previous year. 21 and above, they got a 4-point jump. Milan High School, which is an area high school where my principal came from, they saw a 4-point jump as well, or they saw the percentage points in college readiness. So we really said, hey, we're onto something here with this attack the gap stuff. Where else can we go with it? So we looked at reading. Crestwood High School, where I am the assistant principal currently, 52% of our students came to us below grade level, reading below grade level. 6% of those students were second or third grade. We have a heavy population of English as a second language students. We said we need to do something. What are the results after we did something? And we're going to talk about what we actually did at the end, but we figured we'd leave with results. You know, very nice, more books checked out than ever. That's great. But 22% of our students moved to at or above grade level. That was huge for us. This was in the freshman year. We saw a 1.5 jump on the Explore reading test. And that was just in 12 weeks of instruction. We stopped all of our students, no matter how high or how low they were their freshman year. And we said, you are all going into a learning to read class. We're going to talk about that. Junior year reading results using similar things. 6 kids over 30 in reading last year. With some of the strategies that we used in reading, we had 19 kids over a 30. Okay, we're 55% free and reduced lunch. We're not, you know, this wealthy, affluent, you know, all kids are going to Harvard and Yale. And that's not how it is. A lot of our kids go to community college. A lot of our kids go to area universities, the directional universities in Michigan, Eastern, Western, Central. So this is some reading data. You know, again, we had the big jump in Explore. We had the big jump in our Lexile scores. We use the SRI. You're going to hear Lexile over and over and over today. If you don't have a measure for your students' Lexile scores, you absolutely have to get one. Our state test does not tell parents where their kids are reading at. So we said we're going to get another test, and we're going to test our kids and say, where are you guys reading at, and how can we fix it? So when we get to this stuff, we talk about test prep, and a lot of schools are doing that ACT class either in the semester or the trimester leading up to the ACT. And test prep is good, but having the skill and talent to actually do the task is even better. So I can tell kids that there are 30 questions in 30 minutes, but if a kid doesn't have the talent to do it, I can give him 30 hours to do it, and it doesn't really matter. He's still going to get a 10 on it. So our belief is that when we teach someone something and we teach them well, they will do well on anything. And we compare this to a big league hitter. They can hit a forkball, a curveball, a fastball. Not just, you know, they're not just hitting the one pitch that they know. They can do anything. So give my kid the AP Lang test. Give my kid the ACT English test. Give my kid whatever test you want, and I believe that they are going to be able to do well if I teach them well. In Michigan, we saw a real shift. The MMC that is up here is our state curriculum. The MME is our state test. A large component of our state test is the ACT. So a lot of this stuff that we talk about is really driving home that ACT, which also is a component of our state test. But, you know, 15 years ago, before I was in high school, it was just, let's just get kids graduated. We want to make sure all kids graduate. We didn't really care what it was. Then we discovered, as the business people were talking about, holy cow, we're cranking out these kids who aren't prepared for anything. So let's get them some rigor in their high school graduation. Let's add algebra, geometry, physics, chemistry, all of those things, and make sure they all have that before they graduate. Now it's let's make sure they're all college ready. So when we look at what our junior year was, we were giving kids advanced algebra. The ACT was testing algebra and geometry. We were giving kids physics. The ACT was testing critical thinking and scientific inquiry. We were giving our kids literature when really they needed learning to read and reading for information. We were talking about the writing process to our students when really they needed to do a writing prompt in 20 minutes, and this is what you need to crank out, and this is what it is. We weren't giving our kids what they needed. We were teaching them these things years before or a year after. Where do you want the information for your kids? Do you want it in long-term memory, something they learned a few years ago, or do you want it in their short-term memory where they say, hey, I just learned this a few weeks ago? We put our kids' needs first, and that drove the change. So our new reality is an attack-the-gap approach in English and math and a thinking and reading curriculum. We have a college algebra class, as I said, the trimester before the ACT. We have a forensic science class that all of our kids take that is based in critical thinking and kind of that deep reading, that scientific text, that kind of thing. All of our sophomores take that class. We do learning to read strategies. We have a composition plan. We have plan tests as sophomores. We also do explore tests periodically for our students. And for those of you who don't know, I hope ACT isn't listening, but you can buy retired or decommissioned explore tests for about 82 cents a pop. They don't give you the reports that are so helpful, but if you need a quick midterm assessment where you just want to know how your kids are doing and whether or not they're on track, about 82 cents a student, and you can get those things and then run them through your Scantron machine or run them through your data warehouse. The junior English, we created this, we really focused on this attack the gap and the quality core. And if you guys haven't seen the quality core, I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. So math, we target key areas of weakness from the plan test. We do a lot of reteaching, a lot of mastery instruction. If a kid has the ability to pass the class and has the ability to do better on an exam, we know they're going to stay in the game for longer. The biggest problems in classes are those kids that have 32% heading into the 7th week of the 12-week trimester. They're done. They're out. So if they're out at that point, they're only causing problems for everybody else. So we are looking at what we can do to make sure that that 32% kid has received so many layers of instruction that he is at a 68% and he's shooting for that 75. He's at a 75% and he's shooting for that 80. So it's that reteach thing, that elementary strategy. I mean, when you think back to your elementary years, how many times did you circle cat, in the sentence, circle cat, circle cat? Which one's the verb? Which one's the noun? You did it 100 times because they retaught it until it was embedded in you. And we also sorted by talent. That can sometimes be a little icky thing. We don't want to talk about tracking, but when it is academic tracking and when you are giving kids what they need, when it is fluid, as Christine said, that is what is right for students. We're not saying, John Tafelski, I had your brother, he was a fool. You're probably a fool too. You're in that low track class. We're saying, John Tafelski, this was your score. We are going to put you with kids who have similar needs to you, and we are going to make sure we get you that. And when you grow, we are going to move you up into the next class. How many people have seen this? This is the ACT thing that you get, the disc that you get from ACT. So we took a look and we said, well, what can we do? So we worked with some tech people, and we got it down to this, where we actually have all students, the questions that they got correct, the questions that they got wrong, and it's a quick cut and paste, pop it into Excel, and you can see down at the bottom there, 234 kids got question 1 right. Well, 234 out of 260 kids got question 1 right. Let's not spend too much time on that standard. One thing we know about ACT, Plan, Explore, the further down the test that you get, the harder the questions get. So not only does the kid get to that 30th question and he's tired because he's taken 2 sections already, they're hitting him with the hardest questions he's seen so far. So we had about 78 kids get those questions right. So we really want to target those standards. So we looked at the Explore, Plan, ACT, kind of those standards, and we said, what standards do we need to teach? So this was the plan analysis from the 2011 plan test. Standard 1 had, 6 questions from it. So we know when we look at those 6 questions, our kids, average got this many of those right. This many kids got those right. So we know exactly how long and how much time we want to devote to each one of those standards. Standard 3, we probably don't want to devote as much time to. So again, it is intentional. We know exactly what we are teaching to our students. We call it a dynamic or a smart curriculum because this standard analysis tells us what we need to teach, but the class and the kids in front of us tell us when we need to teach it. So if I have a bunch of kids who did really well on Standard 1 and 2, I'm not going to teach Standard 1 and 2 as much. I'm going to spend that 12 weeks on the other 5 or 6 standards. We also have a writing process in place. What we found is that our students were doing a lot of, kind of writing and what was it connected to and journal about what you did this weekend and how great. And then they got to the ACT and it was, the new legislature in North Dakota says that they are going to knock down Mount Rushmore. What are your feelings on that? And you're like, what? Oh my goodness, I've never written anything like this. So we wanted a writing plan in place. So we talked about common rubrics. So our English department got together, did a common rubric. Definitive meaning to terms. When you say what's a thesis statement, we asked our English department that. Freshman English teacher said one thing, sophomore English teacher said another thing, junior English teacher said another thing. See, if our English department doesn't know what those are, and, you know, granted, it was all kind of the same. What's the point of the paper? What, you know, your power statement. But they were all saying something a little bit different. If I'm a 15-year-old kid, the last thing I'm thinking about is a thesis statement. So if I can't get a straight answer from year to year to year about what it is, how am I supposed to ever master it? So we talked about definitive meaning to terms, timed experiences, and a writing plan. So this is what our writing plan is. We want to make sure that they have 4 meaningful writing attempts or whatever in their freshman year. We have a freshman transitions class where all of our kids come in, and it's kind of welcome to Crestwood High School. This is what it is. We have two writing samples in freshman English and 1 in U.S. history. We didn't feel it was fair to our English teachers to say, okay, we're going to have this many timed experiences in each year. By the way, in addition to everything else you have to cover, English people, you now have to cover this many essays and read this many essays. So we went through and we had our forensic science teacher give a sample essay. And guess what? When we had teachers grade it based on the rubric, they all came within a point or so of that English department that did it. So everybody can do it. It just takes a little bit of time and it takes a little bit of buy-in from people. So again, as you go through, this is kind of a look at the writing plan. In the 12th grade year, we want to make sure that the kids have blue books because, again, how sad is it when our kids, after we've had them for 13 years, get to their freshman year and get to their first exam and the professor's like, you need a blue book, and they're like, a what? So we want our kids to have that experience. They're a nickel, you know. Spend $500 out of the high school budget and get that. Spend it out of your department budget, whatever you want to do, whatever you have to do. Get kids that experience. So back to the reading test. That was kind of our 11th grade English and math attack the gap. So we evaluate our students as they come in on their SRI and their Explore test. And we graded them in that freshman English class that we said we're going to put all kids in. EBLI, 25% on EBLI, is evidence-based literacy instruction. If you take nothing else away from this and you want to start a literacy course or something like that at your high school, look it up, ebli.com, E-B-L-I. It is a little unique. If you talk to a reading specialist or if you talk to an elementary teacher, they may hate you and they may say you don't know what you're talking about because the founder of it has really gone back and said what really works. And you will see kids with whiteboards and they're sounding out words, and it's really about phonemic awareness. It's about segmenting. It's about fluency. It's about making meaning out of things. It's about saying, this is the root. This is where this is. This is where this comes from. So EBLI is what we use as a learning to read thing. And again, all kids get this. 25% of the class is writing, 25% of the class is independent reading, and 25% is the assigned reading. So this last 50% right there, if you've ever read Kelly Gallagher, this is kind of based on Kelly Gallagher's principles. Let's get the kids reading things that they like to read, and they will read more. Again, when we go back to that slide, more books being checked out than ever. That wasn't a coincidence. Kids realize that there are cool things out there for them to read. We took some of the books that we traditionally read that English teachers loved, and we said, you know what? Let's give what kids are going to love. So we read Lost Boy, Lost Girl. That's, I believe that's the one. There were a couple that we were looking at, but I believe that's the one about a family in the Sudan going through kind of the turmoil that was happening there. Current event articles, nonfiction reading, that's based more on Kelly Gallagher's premises. Students got broken up into 4 groups based on their Lexile score. Again, we didn't look at their GPA, we looked at their Lexile score. So there were kids with a 4.0 who worked their butt off and spent a ton of time at home on homework, but really couldn't read a lick. And they needed that reading. They needed those learning to read strategies. They did really well in math and science, but when it came to English and reading, they really struggled. So we had below basic, basic, basic intermediate, intermediate high, and high. All kids got sustained silent reading. I think they did it 2 days a week for about 15 minutes. Here is what we did for the first 3 weeks. We took those kids when we tracked them, and we said for the first 3 weeks, this is what you are going to get. If you are below basic or basic, it is strictly learning to read strategies. You are coming in every day for 75 minutes learning to read. You are going to be in a small classroom. We are going to use EBLI. EBLI is the learning to read strategy that we used again. If you are basic intermediate, for the first 3 weeks, you're going to get some EBLI, some learning to read strategies, then you're also going to get some work on vocabulary and reading for information. So that's kind of how we're splitting it. If you're in the next group, you're going to get a little bit of EBLI, a little bit of vocabulary and reading for information, a little bit of metacognition, so kind of that higher order thinking. And if you're way up there and you're high, you're above grade level, you're going to get a little bit of EBLI on some of those real thick, dense, as Eric says, academic vocabulary words, okay, that they get to and they look, and when they get to the ACT, they see that word, and it just stymies them and stumps them. No matter how good of a reader they are, when you see a word, one of those science words or one of those other words that just really sticks, that's costing you time. Time is ticking off the clock. You no longer have that time to spend reading other questions and answering questions. So they're still getting that. They're getting reading for information, metacognition, and academic vocabulary, that true academic vocabulary. The reason we did this is because we looked at our Lexile targets, and this is what it is. You know, your reading level, if you score an 800 on the SRI, you're at grade 3. If you score a 1200, you're at grade 10. We looked at this and we're like, okay, 52% of our kids are coming in below grade level. That's a problem. And then we look and we see years down the road the Common Core is coming. And these are the future targets. So all of that stuff that I told you about how 52% of our kids are, now we're below grade level, 52% of our kids with the new targets are like at a 5th grade reading level. That's a problem. So, Ron and I beat up our middle school principal enough and said, why don't you change? Why don't you? And, he's yelling at us because, they have things to get to too. It was a constant. And we said, listen, we're going to stop the kids here. And Jason, our middle school principal, said, I'm going to do everything that I can to get them prepared, and you guys take them the rest of the way. So these are the new Lexile targets. That was, we saw that at our NASSP, our secondary school principals. So we took those things and we said, okay, we need something else day to day. And what else can we use? So we talked to some people in the know, and we talked about the quality core. And why do we use the quality core? And it's because our idea of things and ACT's idea of things are two very different things. Okay, when Christine's people took the ACT, they saw that, and you will see that if you've ever sat down. We give 100 questions in geometry throughout the trimester that say, here's the equation, graph it. Kid gets to the ACT his 11th grade year, what do? Here's the graph. What's the equation? It's not a higher proficiency. It's not a different standard. It's not a different skill. It's just knowing it inside and out. It's knowing where the points are, what you have to do. Height versus altitude. Our kids did really well on this chapter test in our geometry class. Trish says, I'm going to give them the quality core. I'm going to give them a little 10-question test from the quality core. Every question on those same standards, they did not use the word height one time. They used the word altitude every single time. And our kids were like, Ms. Cachero, what is altitude? What is altitude? She said, this is what altitude is. Okay? It's the same thing as height. You guys have already learned it. In the ACT, they can't ask the proctor what altitude means. So know something and knowing it well, and then also which is the best answer. That's one of ACT's favorite things to do. It's a great test because it makes you know it really well. The other reason we use quality core, and again, this is a slide we got from EdTrust. If you've never seen any work with EdTrust, it's a really good organization that's doing a lot of good things. We know that homework assignments, tests, all of that stuff really kind of plane out around 9th grade. So when you are testing kids in the 11th grade, really the chances are the highest kind of proficiency you're getting to is 9th grade. So you're 2 years behind. So we need something that appropriately measures students at their grade level. That's why we use the quality core. When we test a kid in 11th grade, we really want them to be getting 11th grade testing. We don't want to know that they know stuff really well at the 9th grade when they're in 11th grade. We want them to know it grade level appropriate, and we want them to know it well. So there was a backlash to this. There was the tyranny of the exception. What about the student who's at a 1st grade reading level, who can't tie his shoes, who's nonverbal? How is he going to pass this college prep algebra and geometry class? What about the kid that walks uphill backwards both ways? How is he going to do this? And we really looked at what do all of our kids need, okay? We have systems in place for those students to really help them along and to motivate them and get them the skills that they need. But what do all of our kids need? And all of our kids need fundamental math, reading for information, and writing. I'm a technology teacher, so it was tough for me to tell our computer teacher, hey, listen, we're going to kind of shift what we're doing here, and we're going to add a core class or two. But the reason we did it is because as a technology teacher, I know that if the kid can't read, can't write, and can't do fundamental math, the closest he is going to get to a job in technology is welcome to Walmart. Our technology department is over there. That's it. That is his future, okay? We can give him all of the science he wants, but if he can't do reading, writing, or fundamental math, he is going to be working the front counter at a pharmacy, and that is the closest he is going to get to science. So let's get him reading, writing, and fundamental math, and then when he is prepared, get him into science and let him kick butt in science, because he can do that. He can be the pharmacist, but let's teach him what he needs to know first. We have a moral imperative to our students. There needs to be a thinking curriculum, a reading curriculum, writing on demand, algebra and geometry. If you've never seen Bill Daggett, he's a great resource. It gets to those essential skills. I know one of the presenters earlier was talking about the soft skills. That's really what Bill Daggett's essential skills test does. And then we also have advanced algebra in Michigan, and that was something that was brought in. It was thought to bring more jobs to the area. You know, and we'll see how that works. But there are some politics behind all of the educational policies, and you have to keep that in mind when you are planning for your students. What is best for the student? What do I need to do to make sure our school is still succeeding? And then how can I balance that against the community, the politics, and all of those other things? So with this, we also saw that, hey, our kids are doing better, what can we do? So we really focused this past year on AP and dual enrollment. We went from, I'm embarrassed to say this, we have 1,200 kids in our school. We had 13 kids dual enrolled last year. That's embarrassing for dual credit or for college credit, as Peggy said earlier. This year, with a renewed focus and a directive from us, we had over 100 kids dual enrolled. We had 250 kids last year, or 2 years ago, I should say, in AP classes, 250 seats. Next year we have 700. So we really have that moral imperative to stretch students a little farther. In the most important test of the student's life that has academic and economic implications, look at the differences between Michigan, Michigan State, Central Michigan, you know, when you talk about Purdue, when you talk about some local community colleges. I called around and what is the 2 points worth that you can get this kid? So our 3.0 kid that went up 3 points on his ACT. That took him from attending Grand Valley State University, which is a great institution. He's now in the ball game to attend the University of Michigan, to attend Purdue for engineering instead of doing one of those other things, okay? He is now in the ball game instead of a 25-26 at a 28-29. And when you look here, graduate earning power, this is from payscale.com. What is 2 points worth to that student? Okay, look over their lifetime. Think of that in the aggregate. And it's a lot, okay? It really is a lot. I mean, you know, we did the math, and if a kid goes to Wayne State, which is one of our local universities in Detroit, over his lifetime he'll earn, you know, $1 million or something. Over, you know, somebody in Michigan's lifetime, they're going to earn $3 million. So there is an academic, there is an economic implication for all of our students. And for us, obviously, we have a moral imperative. We want to see improvement on our ACT and on our state tests. We also want to deliver on our mission statement. So I appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to email or call. I know we'll be around later today if you have any questions about any of the things that we do or any of the tools we use. And again, thank you very much.